Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Why don't you start it off with an awesome cold open?
I believe I can put the cold in this open. That's for sure. Your early company success hinges on one thing, Anthony: momentum. How do you build traction early and turn your idea into a thriving business?
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Sorry, I get all fired up every time I see that. In the mid-2000s, a young entrepreneur had an idea for a product that he believed would revolutionize the way people manage their daily tasks. He poured his heart in developing the product, fine-tuning every feature and perfecting the user experience. When he was launched, the response was underwhelming. Despite having a great product, no one seemed to notice. Story of my life. Determined not to give up, he decided to take a different approach. Instead of focusing on a broad audience, he targeted a specific niche: productivity enthusiasts. I don't know who the hell those are. Those are not us, that's for sure. Who were active in online forums and blogs. He started by offering the product for free to encourage potential bloggers, encouraging them to share their thoughts with their followers. Soon, word began to spread, and the product started to gain traction. As more people discovered it, the momentum built rapidly. The big Mo. That entrepreneur was Mike Cannon-Brooks, and the product was Atlassian's, easy for you to say, Jira. By targeting a specific niche and leveraging the power of word of mouth, Cannon-Brooks was able to generate the early momentum that would eventually build Atlassian into a billion-dollar company. Today, we'll be discussing early momentum and traction. How do you ignite that initial spark and keep it burning? What strategies can help you gain traction right out of the gate? How the hell do you even say Atlassian? All that and more on today's How to Founder. Good morning. My name is Chris Franks.
And I'm Anthony Franco. How to Founder is where you, the founder, discover tips, tricks, and details.
It's like our first time speaking English. We're struggling this morning.
That English professors refuse to teach you.
It's already
Chris, good morning. I think you started off by showing that you are not a developer by mispronouncing. I mean, you got Jira right. Right. So
I've used Jira as well, but the problem, it's a little thing called dyslexia. It's terrific. So today, Anthony, we're focusing on one of the most crucial phases of a startup: building early momentum and traction. It's what can take you from just another idea to a growing and thriving business. So let's dive right in. First of all, other than things like that you need to put snow tires on your car, what is this whole traction thing? Define it for me.
Traction is early repeatable sales. If you're revenue based, right? If you're trying to generate revenue,
if you're a normal company.
Well, I mean, you could argue that Facebook gained traction and revenue wasn't their initial metric; it was eyeballs. So, depending on what you think, you're like for a podcast, traction is growth in user base.
The ability to do the cold open without fucking up the name Atlassian probably is
yeah. So we're right on pace for what we thought where we thought we would be at this point.
Very little. I like it. So if one of the hard things here is that there is no single definition of traction, and it varies from business to business. Give me an example of a company you've done in the past that you thought you would gain traction with.
Well, let's not try to define. Let's try to define it for what a founder cares about, right? Chris, what do you care about when you start a company? What do we care about with this thing called Pro Founder Network? When we're talking about traction, what does that mean to you?
It means, and even pre-revenue, it's a very easy metric, which is a give a fuck metric. Do people actually care about what you're doing? Now, one of the hardest parts there is that, let's say you're a B2B SaaS company, and let's say that you're going to be selling something that's going to cost $1 million a year. But to try to find whether or not people give a fuck actually is really hard, because this is your baby's not ugly syndrome. You're going to go and talk to people like, oh, that sounds brilliant, even when they won't buy it. And so the notion there is sometimes it's a little bit hard to define, but for me, it's whether people actually seem to care about what you're doing, and then we'll take some sort of action, something. They have to do something that is theirs, and they have to give that to you. It doesn't always have to be money.
That's an interesting definition. So it's are they willing to make intros? Are they willing to make connections for you? Do they know people that would want, if they're not the customer, do they know people that want customer? I mean, that's really early traction, right? And I would agree, like as you're considering starting a business, but how about now that we've started, right? So now probably should form a company, but
overrated.
And open a bank account. But
whichever members of the IRS are listening, we're totally kidding.
But when it comes to like, all right, we've decided there's a business, we've gotten enough early signs to build something. Now how, like, we talk about traction, and I look, when we full disclosure here for everybody listening, Chris and I talked about this yesterday, last night, a little bit about the topic, and we both kind of went, well, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think? Traction is really, it's one of those really, it's those things that, it's the thing that investors say you need in order to gain investment, but nobody ever tells you how to build traction, because they're all tropes. It's a lot of it is just bullshit on how to gain momentum, or it feels very Ponzi scheme, or it feels inauthentic. And I think the core problem with talking about traction and building momentum in early stages is that, first of all, the way to do it changes. It's so ephemeral, right? So the thing that works today ain't going to work 6 months from now, because there's now 20 courses about how that one thing happened in a really good way. And now everybody's doing it. And now that thing that worked 6 months ago has a bunch of noise in it, and everybody's doing that. So it's really hard to build traction. So I think the thing that I'm struggling with on how to talk about this is there's no generic tactical advice on traction that works all the time. There's some things that you should do, but it's a very difficult topic to talk in an evergreen sort of way. Chris, I don't know if that resonates with you.
No, I think it does. And I think that's one of the things, and part of the reasons why I think both you and I have an allergic reaction to this word is it's the best word for us to use to describe how an early stage company can move forward. Hence the word traction. Are we moving the company forward? But at the same time, it has been stolen from VCs. It's been stolen by people that are pundits and bullshit artists and snake oil salesmen. And so really, this moment right now, we're taking it back, founders. We're fucking reclaiming that word. It's ours now again. So I think that, so let's start to think about what is traction for us as founders, and what are the moments that we can feel good about moving based on our time and energy into each gate of a business. And so I think that an interesting way to talk about it is, as we think backwards from a business model, what are the gates that you need to do to make sure that somebody's going to pay you for the thing you're doing? Because that's really the goal. Remember, we said it from the very beginning, if somebody's not paying you, it's a hobby. Like our podcast, Anthony, it's a hobby. It's an expensive one too. Think of all the gear we've bought for this podcast. I've spent at least $19.99. Maybe $22.
You need to invest in makeup.
That's But so as we think about working our way backwards, there's a lot of things that we call vanity metrics. So talk about like what would be a vanity metric versus a real traction metric for you, the founder, not something you're going to go out and sell to an investor or even partners.
This is a tangent, and it's actually probably a good topic on its own. What are vanity metrics? So sales can be a vanity metric. It can. Sales can be a vanity metric, because if you're selling and losing money on every sale or breaking even, then it's a vanity metric. Followers can be a vanity metric. This is a rabbit hole that has nothing to do with traction, but what you measure does matter. And if you have a salesperson, right, that you're measuring them on revenue and they're generating great revenue, but you're losing money on every deal, you're measuring the wrong thing. And therefore it's a vanity metric. So I think, traction kind of falls in three buckets. And when I think about traction, I always think about revenue, but in reality, it falls in three buckets. One is revenue. One is, and I would say, I would refine that a little bit and say profitable revenue that is improving your bottom line. The second is product revenue, or product traction. So your product continuing to improve. And the third is awareness. And they kind of would feed one another. And you could also say there's a fourth, which is improving your operations, your back end stuff. But I think those three are the most important, especially in early stage companies. It's do people know about me? Am I improving the service or product on a continual basis? Am I making traction there? And am I bringing in dollars that are costing me less to generate than I'm bringing in? And they feed on one another, right? They feed on one another.
So let's start at that first thing. Let's start about awareness, because I think, to me, that's the place where a lot of people still have this myth of build it and they will come. But awareness, so in awareness, what is a vanity metric in awareness, and what is a real live piece of traction? You don't have a product yet. You don't even have a real thing. What are some things that you can do, simple tactical things, to see whether or not you believe there's traction for that next gate?
Yeah, we were talking, actually, this is really interesting, because I had the same conversation with a founder. She was in one of our founder boards 2 days ago, Chris. Amazing founder. You would call her, what in your terms, badass founder, right?
Badass.
And she was talking about struggling to figure out how to gain awareness. And so when we think about awareness, a lot of that goes to like online, like buying ads or social posts or number of followers. And the reality is there's a lot of noise online, really hard to gain engagement traction online. And I started asking her about what she's doing in person, going to farmers markets, going to fairs, going and walking trade shows, and those were the things where she's going to gain that early traction. It's in my opinion, it's likely not online. It's very likely the harder piece, which is talking to people face to face, talking through your your product or service or idea. And her metric her KPI that she came up with is, I'm going to talk to 60 people. No, I'm going to talk to 100 people in 60 days. And I thought that was a really great metric to measure traction on, because the traction is going to do two things. It's going to gain awareness, albeit slowly and not scalably, but also it will help her refine her messaging and her product as she's having those conversations. So I mean, I don't know if that resonated with you, but that's kind of what I thought about.
I think that the number one thing, and this is really hard because for a founder, we're not talking about taking this to investors. We're not talking about inflating this number, which is, can you create a list? Can you create a list of actual human beings with actual contact information that give a shit about your product? And I'm right with you, Anthony. He's a dude that spent the majority of his life getting paid to teach people how to do stuff online. Oftentimes the answer is not online. Oftentimes the answer is walking around and getting a business card or having somebody on a piece of paper give them your email, give your email address, and then immediately follow up and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Would you like to be added to a wait list? Would you like to be added to our monthly newsletter that talks about what we're doing with our product? I think that one of the pieces where I've struggled in the past is when I was thinking about raising money is I would go get a bunch of people. I would give some free white paper or something like that, and then they would give us their email address, and they were not at all interested in what I was selling. So it became a vanity metric. But if you can create a list, I mean, shit, over there is just a list of sticky notes with people's names and email addresses on them. It doesn't have to be fancy, but can you start with a group of people that actually care? So here's a harder question though, Anthony. How many people do I need on my list before I can start to be like, okay, people actually care?
How much is your product or service? If your product or service is $100,000, you need 10.
Fair. Yeah.
And if it's $1,000, you need 100. And if it's $10, you need 100,000.
Right. I mean, I would there's some math.
I would kind of put that metric on $1 million. Like what is it? How many customers does it take to get to 1 million? And then you can reverse engineer that to how many people should I be talking to?
I think it's a really good metric internally to have. So if $1 million in revenue, and there's a lot of data out there, I don't know if it's been updated, but in the numbers about failure within companies, they say that numbers like 80 to 85% of failure, that percentage flips once you get to $1 million in revenue. That's 5 years survivability as a company. So if you get to $1 million in revenue, you now have an 80% likelihood that you do survive, not an 80% likelihood you fail. And so getting that $1 million is a really good benchmark number for a founder to kind of model backwards off of. So I could just do some basic math, right, Anthony? I can go out and say, I've got a $3 product. I'm going to close, of these people that say they're interested, 1 out of every 5 might actually buy it. And then just do the math to build up to that. Does that seem like a reasonable place to start?
Yeah, it does. But it still doesn't take out that need to do that. So if you have a $3 product and you're trying to get $1 million in revenue, it was my understanding there would be no math, but that's about 333,000 people that you have to buy your product to hit that $1 million mark. That's really hard to do face to face.
Yeah,
one at a time.
Really hard to do. Like even
it's really hard to do online too, right? But you still need to do that upfront, early, grassroots, face to face conversations to refine your product pitch and potentially the product to understand what people want and want to buy, so that you can scale that messaging online if that's your end game. I don't know did I answer your question, Chris?
No, I think it's a really good point. But we as founders, and I think this is really one of the things that is we're reclaiming. It's fucking ours, guys. It's ours. The word traction again is starting with a metric that you as the founder feel comfortable with. And trust me when I say this, you will try to bullshit yourself. Like, I want to have 10,000 email addresses and you have 1,000. You're like, I'm killing it. It's really setting a firm metric that you say, okay, I believe that I've created enough traction for me, the founder. Remember, founders, the most valuable thing that you have is your time and attention. And if you're focusing on something that's never going to work, you're wasting your time and attention. It's the most valuable thing. It's your capital. That's what you're wasting at that point. And so if you can figure out those things that really invest, that can make you decide to invest your time and money, I think you're on your way. Okay, so let's talk about product traction, Anthony.
Well, one second, really quick.
Are you
before we move on to product
coffee cup? So founders that are live, I'm a ray of sunshine. I'm a ray of sunshine, founders.
Really? So the default, typically the default area where founders want to develop traction is product. It is usually the place. It's our comfort zone, right? It's we have a skill or we have an idea that we want to sell. So we go back to refining that product. So I think product traction is actually a natural, for most entrepreneurs, the most natural thing to build traction on. And so the hard part is awareness and revenue. So don't default to what become like I suffer from this greatly. This is my Achilles heel as I go to product. The product isn't good enough. And in reality, for me and for most founders, it's no, your sales process, your willingness to be uncomfortable and awkward in front of people to talk about your product or service is what is lacking, not the product. The product is fine. Most likely the product is fine. What your ability to sell it is really probably where you need to gain insight and traction on.
I see that there's 2 people live, and I'm going to assume that 20 million or so will listen to this later on. But I'm going to give your 2 people live and the 20 million people to listen to this later on what took me almost every single hair follicle on my head and probably $1 million+ and years of my life to learn. And it's the simplest hack in the world. And it's completely contrarian to the belief that when I came up about the steps I needed to take to become a successful company, which is, it turns out for me to go buy a domain and me to put a website up and me to put some traffic on that website, I don't need a product. I don't need to incorporate my business. I don't need to have filed with the Secretary of State. I don't need a trademark. I need none of that stuff. So what you're saying, Anthony, is the market is looking at the market first, trying to understand what the market wants before you go invest thousands of hours trying to build the perfect solution, which you're going to get fucking wrong anyway. It turns out you can go create vaporware. You can create mechanical Turk solutions. Mechanical Turks meaning it's not actually working. It's a person behind the scene actually doing the thing that you say the product's going to be doing. You can create all these phantom products, put them out in the market, and see whether or not people will pay for them before you actually form any company or build any product. Now, I'm not saying take money. When you hit buy now on a website, it should go to a 404 page. Don't ever take money, but accept that click as actual traction.
It should go to a 404 page?
No, I say go to hey, we're out of stock. Or the product will want to. Give us your email.
We're out of stock on this digital product that we're selling you.
We're we're not quite ready to launch.
Yeah.
And as soon as you know that hack, you'll start to see it. You'll start to see when you fall into other people's experiments and you go and you hit, oh, that's really interesting. Learn more. Buy now. And it goes, oh, we're not quite ready to launch this product yet. You are now giving an indication to another person that their idea There is an actual market for it. The other beautiful thing about this hack, Anthony, is that it takes me 14 and a half seconds to change a landing page. I can change the idea. I can change what it does. I can change the features. I can mock up things in Figma. I can make something look very, very real, even though I haven't built the product. It's like that to me, when I learned that I could do that, it changed my entire perspective of being an entrepreneur. It changed the way that I thought about it. So what's your biggest hack that you've done? What's your
So the biggest momentum hack I've ever done that didn't work, right? So, but I thought it was whenever I tell people about it, they're like, that's really clever. One of my companies, we were selling, essentially think of them as whiteboards. We were selling whiteboards and they were installation. So they needed to be installed into offices. So the hypothesis was we need to find companies that are relocating into new office space or renovating their office. So at what point did we think that they were going to buy furniture fixings for the furniture, yeah. Fixtures is the word I was looking for.
Again, people don't tune in for grammar, Anthony.
Fixtures.
They don't tune in to learn how to speak purdy.
Anyway, so we need to find out when they were about to buy fixtures, and that we decided that was the time, and when they were installing carpet was likely the right time to start selling them fixtures for their office space. So we hired 2 people to go around and follow carpet installers. We called it the knee kicker strategy. Yeah, we literally get in your car, go to a carpet installer headquarters, follow the trucks when they leave the headquarters early in the morning and find out where they go, write that company down, and let's give the CEO a call.
Well, I believe that's when you got arrested for stalking. So well done.
Well, that wasn't the time, but anyway, so
that was the 3rd time I got arrested.
So I still think it was a really clever strategy, and we probably didn't give it enough time to decide whether or not it was worth the effort. We did get one sale out of it, but that kind of, so when you hear people say growth hacking, that's what they're talking about. And I couldn't write that in a book as the thing to do. That's what I talk about. It's ephemeral. Like if everybody started doing that, it's no longer a growth hack. It's now what everybody's doing. And so
a lot more stalking arrests in the United States.
But that's the thought experiment you need to have, right? Where are my customers? What stage of their life are they in? How do we go interrupt that stage of life in order to get in front of them, to have them understand and build awareness and say whether or not what you're doing is cool or not cool for them.
So let's just talk about the trap for a little bit, which is the product trap, and we've all fallen into it, which is typically we start companies because we start organizations because we want this product and service to be amazing. We spend not nearly enough time thinking about the audience and the market, but then we just build and build and build and build and build, and we turned out what we built is completely wrong. But not this group of people, Anthony. They're listening to us. They're going to have better answers. So how do I avoid constantly following into that product trap as it pertains to building traction? Because it's almost the opposite of traction if you just sit in your room all day and code or build a physical product or whatever it is.
The thing that should keep you up at night is, how am I generating revenue? If that's not keeping you up at night and you're sleeping comfortably, you're focused on the wrong shit. Because Larry Ellison from Oracle still worries about that. That's the fundamental thing that should be keeping you up at night. How do I bring in capital to fuel my business, and in the form of revenue? Investment, yes, but if you haven't figured out the revenue piece, you're going to just blow those investment dollars. So it's fine to work on product. It's great to work on product, but that's your comfortable spot. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to be uncomfortable in order to build traction. Success and comfort are not compatible.
We talked a little bit about this last night when you and I were bullshitting on the phone.
Yeah.
The thing that we as founders do is when shit gets stressful, and it gets stressful, we default to the place where we feel the most productive.
Yep.
Where we feel like at the end of the day, when we shut down our computer, being like, that was a great day. Even if it's not the most important thing, we're going to default to that thing. So if you're a finance person and you love spreadsheets, you're going to be like, well, I'm going to build a new financial model. That's really going to be the thing. This spreadsheet, look at this spreadsheet I built at the end of the day. When the reality is, in early stage companies, there really is only one thing you should be doing, which is going and talking to customers and then coming back and then making any adjustments in your product or service to do that, right?
That's exactly right.
And the problem is, I think you and I, we love getting out of the house. We love talking to founders. We love getting on Zoom calls. It's still hard for us.
Yes.
It's still hard to do it.
Yeah. The forcing yourself to get out and talk to people is really hard. So even if you're an extrovert, it's really hard.
Yeah.
Chris, let's talk about some of the things that, like, I just want to cover these quickly, like the things that you'll find kind of everywhere on how to build traction and momentum. I just kind of want to go through those tactics to not, because they are important, but not the most important necessarily, right? So one is creating compelling content, blogs, podcasts, videos, social media, that kind of stuff. That is something that you can do that does feed on itself. Partnerships and collaborations, go out and find partners that can collaborate with you on stuff like that. Leverage influencers. We'll talk about that in a much deeper length in another episode. There's also this notion of using discounts or incentives or exclusive offers. Those can tend to feel, they can cheapen your effort. So be careful with those. Early customer testimonials, if you can get them, awesome. Paid ads, be careful. Right?
Spend a lot of money. Yeah. I mean,
spend a lot of money.
But you can spend a lot of money.
Document your process and update customers on your process. We're kind of doing that naturally right now. Like, we talk about how to help founders build their business while also we're building ours. So that's kind of what we're doing with this How to Founder podcast.
No, it's How to Pounder is a different series that you're doing, Anthony.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Definitely capture email addresses. I'm going to keep going on as though Chris didn't say that. So capture email addresses for sure. What else am I missing? Right. So those are like the things that everybody tells you to do. Those are the blocking and tackling things. What am I missing?
I think that those are pretty good. Again, anything that you can get somebody to do that's an indication that they're willing to give you money. So how do you take all those tactics are great, right? How do I do a blog post? I'll do some videos. I'll do all this sort of stuff. But what are those things that you can do that from those tactics that are that next logical step where you think, if you think about the funnel, which is, it's a terrible analogy, but it's the funnel. Okay, that's great. The people are aware, but how do you move? What is the indication that they go from aware to interested? Like, do they click on a website? Do they give you an email address? So all those things I think are good. The one thing I want to caution people, particularly early stage, is that there's this concept of, I should be doing all the things. I should be posting on social media every single day. I should be writing a blog post every single day. I should be sending emails to my investors or potential friends every single day. There's a lot of shoulds early on I caution early stage founders to pick one or two tactics, go execute them well. And if you believe the tactic is wrong, fine, pivot off a tactic and go to the next one. But don't try to do all the things all the time, because you will fail. There's not enough hours in the day to do the things you just said for somebody for a full-time job to do that thing. And you probably have other commitments if you're, an early stage founder as well. But I think those are good. Again, how can you personally measure whether or not somebody gives a shit about your product?
Yeah. And on all those things, the blog posts, the content, the videos, the influencers, the social posts, all of those things, keep in mind when you start doing that, now you have to build awareness for your content and your product.
Yeah.
Which content awareness could very quickly becomes a vanity metric.
Right. If I'm writing and posting, this company had so many things wrong with it, including the fact that they paid more to get customers than their lifetime value of customers. That's a whole other story. But, of course, they're VC backed. But one of the metrics I looked at with this company was the social media engagement. And so doing what I do, I just was like, okay, show me. And the social media engagement was their founder, who was like a beefy dude who took his shirt off a lot at the beach in California and was like, hustle porn posts about like, oh, I'm working hard. How are you? I was like, that's not fucking traction. That's people thinking that, they're liking your post because you look cool on the beach. Like, dude, don't use that as a actual traction metric.
I was also, so I have an exactly similar story. Woman founder who VC backed, selling product for women, who one of her KPIs was posting on social 30 times a day. 30 times a day. And posting like TMI, like just like, whoa, I don't want, like, people don't want to hear this. Things that would make you and I squirm, Chris, if she was sitting in the room and talking to us about it. And she had amazing social traction, and there was revenue from it. But so I couldn't fault the process other than to say that's not repeatable for everybody. So you may find somebody that's gaining traction in a really unique way, and if you try to model it, you'll fail. She happened to be successful, which kind of pissed me off, because like, you shouldn't be successful doing this, but she was. So I guess that goes to the point that no matter all the advice that you get on traction, you don't know until you start trying it. And you're going to, the fundamental piece of advice here is keep trying shit until you find something that works, and then kind of double down on that.
But you're right in the sense that there's a constant tango. It's a give and take between, do I have the right people? Do I have the right audience? Do I have the right market? And then do I have the right solution? And what we're calling traction is simply, I found a group of people, I found a market, and I found a solution that seems to fit. Even if I don't know fully, there seems to be some sort of a puzzle piece that is fitting together there. And one of the hardest parts about this job is the moment you think you get it right, something's going to change, the market's going to shift, something in the macro world will shift. And so it constantly needs to be tweaked. But it's like we say with product market fit, like it's a single moment in time. I've achieved product market fit, and the sky's open and things like that. Like it's an ongoing challenge. You don't reach a single moment where you see product market fit. But traction is the concept of, am I getting closer to that magical thing called, I've got an audience, and I've got the market, and I've got a product, and those two things fit together.
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Oh, well, that's great. I've left you speechless for the first time ever. My knowledge bombs this morning. So last little piece of this, and then let's start to kind of put a point on the conversation. So we talked a little bit about idea traction. How do we get that? Then we talked about product traction. And really I think we came to the point that those two things are the same. They're really close together. But then we have this thing called revenue traction or sales traction, where people are actually starting to pay for my thing. Talk a little bit about what's your belief in that, because really that's the ultimate traction we're looking to find. That's the ultimate sign of product market fit. But how can I start to think about that as a founder? What is it that I'm trying to build towards?
Yeah, it's revenue's the fuel, man. Like that is the thing that allows you to do the thing that you love. So if you don't have to love revenue generation, but you have to care passionately about gaining traction there. And if you're losing ground, that is bad. If you're flat, that is bad. The only thing that is acceptable is gaining ground, traction in revenue. It's the only thing that's acceptable.
So obviously services are easier, right? Because services, you can kind of start to say, if I get one person that pays me this amount, all I need to do is get 2 or 3 more people to pay me this amount, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But in product stuff, sometimes it's a little bit harder because you do have to invest more money up front into that product. So you're saying that growth, even if I'm not cash flow positive, I need to be sales positive. So in other words, I need to make sure I'm not paying more for that revenue than I'm getting. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. You need to, you need to grow profitable revenue, period.
And
like that's it.
I know it seems self-explanatory, but explain what profitable revenue is versus unprofitable revenue.
I don't even know how to I don't know how to describe it more than you need to generate more money than you need to generate more money per sale than it's costing you to get that sale.
Yeah. I spent $10,000 on AdWords and I did get a sale. Congratulations. But the lifetime value of that sale is going to be $500.
Yeah. And anybody. So this is a very clever marketing agency trick. When they talk about how much revenue they've generated for a brand, that's great. But what they don't talk about is that it cost them $1.10 for every dollar in revenue they brought in. And or $1, like it's break even, like it's $1 in, dollar out. That's not, I mean, that's the same thing as owning a quarter change machine company where you're renting out quarter change machines and every month you go, I broke even again. Like that's the business you're in.
Yeah.
That can't be the business you're in. Now, early sales as you're testing and experimenting, you may be upside down. That's okay. But the trend should be going towards profitability, not away from. And it needs to be doing that quickly.
The other piece, and this is, it's funny that you use the word clever, Anthony.
Sorry.
But what I always suggested is it's okay to get it wrong early on when you're let's say you're spending $100 or you're spending money on AdWords or something like that. But where I see people really fuck this up is they go to what's called ROAS positive. There's return on ad spend. So you're making more money off of AdWords than you're spending. Well, do that with $100. Where people get that wrong is they go from $100 and then start spending $10,000 a month with the thought of the thing called linear scalability, which is never true.
It's never true.
Go from 100, go to 150, go to 200, then keep this, see when it breaks, see when that tactic breaks, and your ROAS goes back down negative.
It is mathematically impossible to consistently achieve a 6 times ROAS. It's mathematically and grow. It's impossible. It's mathematically impossible to grow and consistently achieve a 6 times ROAS. Possible.
Yeah,
you will reach the entire population of the earth in 32 days.
I love that stat. That is super fantastic. They're like, well, I got a big market. Like, well, yeah, that's true. That's 6-time run, I think. All right, so let's wrap it up. Let's put a point on this conversation. So I think we landed on 3 places. We landed on what is this concept of early stage traction, and we suggested it can be a metric that shows you as the founder that people actually care. How you go about doing that can be showing up in person. It could be doing social posts. It could be a lot of different things. But at the end of this, the first stage of traction, at least for me, is a solid email list or a list of human beings with contact information that actually care. Agree with that, Anthony?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It depends on what business you're in, but for most companies, a good place to start is a non-purchased email list.
Yeah, I've got 30,000 people on my email list. It's like,
yeah, genuine, authentic customer email list. Yes,
of people that have actually indicated to you that they care about it in some form or fashion.
Yeah,
then there's the second thing, which is the product. And really, I think we settle on the fact that it's not really product traction. It's product market traction of some sort, right? And then, that's where iterate, constantly change, try not to spend too much time on the product, really focus on what it is that your customers are telling you, whether or not you want to hear it. And then ultimately at the end of this, every bit of this traction and everything up to the point is about, can you create revenue, and that being profitable revenue, not upside down where I'm paying more to get a customer than it's worth. Of course, you're probably going to have to go through that early as you're learning, but every bit of that is trying to move towards profitable revenue. Mm-hmm. Is that a pretty good summation? And do we forget anything along the way?
Yeah. Well, I think the others, like the early traction is the hardest, and therefore it's going to be hard. Like, just expect the fact that you need to do it. You need to be uncomfortable all the time in order to gain early traction. You need to be doing face-to-faces. You need to be going networking. You need to, you got to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to be wrong. You got to be willing to be made fun of. You need to be okay with people rolling their eyes at you or giving you those cross faces, like stop selling, like all of those things. You need to be comfortable with and get over to develop that early traction.
That's why we do this podcast, is we're just practicing being made fun of, because this is what we do for each other.
Well, we're both just kind of used to it. Like, it's just
very good and insightful conversation, Anthony. It
was fun.
It's one of those things that it's using the Chief Justice William Rehnquist, I believe, quote, "What is traction? Like, what is pornography? I don't know, but I know when I see it." Kind of the same thing here. What is traction? I don't know, but I know it when I see it. Right? It's one of those things. And you, the founder,
I don't love the metaphor, the analogy there. But
you're the one that's talking about pounder. I don't know what's.
Yeah, that was.
All right.
You gotta say pounder TM.
Things where you can find out more.
Trademark.
So, deep dive recommendations: Play Bigger: How Pirates, Dreamers, and Innovators Create Dominant Markets by Sean Pratt. Crossing the Chasm, the classic one. Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey A. Moore. Hooked: How to Build a Habit-Forming Products. I think that's a really good book. And Made to Stick: Why Some Ideas Survive and Other Dies by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. Really good book. I've read that one as well. So let's wrap this up. That's it for today. Anthony, what do we got coming up next week? And where can people find us, follow us, connect, all that good stuff?
So on Tuesday next week, we have a guest. And we're going a little bit out of order on our podcast list. Because she's just a great guest to have on. So we're going a little bit out of order here. So we're going to talk about franchising with Kelly Amshoff. I think I got her or pronounced her name right. And we're going to talk about both buying a franchise as a founder and buying into a franchise, as well as how do I take my business and turn it into a franchisable business? So there's kind of a two-headed coin here that we're going to be talking about. Super excited about that. That'll be on Tuesday. And she's a franchise expert. And then for us to follow us on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/howtofounder. And on our YouTube channel, which is at just simply youtube.com/@howtofounder. The at sign, not the letter, not AT, the at sign.
I think we're beyond that as a society now.
I don't know why I decided to call that out. I just, for some reason, I was like, I better specify it's the at symbol.
You are not giving the credit to the audience that they deserve. Basically, audience.
No, that's on me. That's not on them. I'm like, I wonder, I was thinking, I wonder if I would type in AT, how to founder, or the ads. I better specify.
You and my dad might do that. Those would be the same.
I'll skip that joke. So again, linkedin.com/company/howtofounder, and on YouTube, follow Chris and I. Our handles on LinkedIn and X are right in the screen here. Guys, thank you again. I look forward to seeing you next week. And also, please follow us on How to Founder on LinkedIn, because all of our events we have a ton of events coming up. Follow us there. You'll get notified of those events, and got lots of great stuff coming. Chris, thank you.
Have a good weekend, founders. Go crush it.
All right. Gary V, you can't say crush it anymore. That's Gary V's book.
That's trademarked too.
Trademarked. All right. Bye, guys.